Good day, strategy gamers, and welcome back to episode 12 of our Let's Play series of the 1941 Grand Scenario as the Soviet player. In this episode, we're going to be completing the second half of turn 5 of the game by focusing on our ground movement phase of our forces in the theater south of Aryol, and then also taking a look at where we want our reserve and reinforcements to come in and where they'll be most impactful on our front line. And then we're also going to be ending the turn doing a very kind of high-level commentary as the German phase executes, and then we'll do our usual end-of-turn summary and news events. I had mentioned in the previous episode that I may turn some of these turns into 3 episodes so as not to have, say, a 3 hours, or excuse me, 2 1.5-hour episodes totaling 3 hours, and instead try to split it up a little. I've kind of compromised, and I'd be curious your feedback if this makes sense to you guys. I've done a lot of the administrative and clerical work off screen this time. So, for example, going through and all the reinforcements that we had brought into Aryol in the previous turn, taking these units and assigning them to armies and rifle corps and a lot of those logistical challenges, doing that off camera. So you guys didn't have to necessarily watch through that. I think it kind of makes sense as really the Stalingrad to Berlin Let's Play series that we have is really dedicated a little bit more into going into, I've done this step, here is why. Whereas I feel this Let's Play series is much more of a, how do we really challenge ourselves in one of the more challenging situations that the various scenarios present to you in this game. So I'm going to see how that goes. Curious if any of you have any strong feelings one way or the other on that. But that should then give us enough time to be able to complete this episode and in the turn without having to add a third episode to turn 5. So with that, let's get right into it. In the previous episode, we left off right here in kind of the southern patch of forest south of Aryol. And I think all of this is pretty well situated. We have a lot of units that are still making their way south just because they didn't have enough movement to come all the way down. But we really do seem to have a very dense defensive structure now protecting Aryol. And we have a little bit more tweaking to do by bringing some of these forces northwest to help defend the flank of Smolensk, and then bringing a few more south as well to kind of stretch into these patches of forest and swamp to help defend Kursk. But I mean, this is a pretty formidable force that we've brought in reinforcement-wise that should really be able to hold this. In the previous 2 turns, we had dedicated our reinforcements to really populating our defensive lines in the northern half of the theater, defending Leningrad, defending Smolensk, defending south of Lake Ilmen. So really the north of the map is looking much better. They have continued to make good progress towards Smolensk, but that was expected. And it's not like they're in a situation where next turn, 2 turns from now, they're going to have enough to knock us out of Smolensk. I mean, we already have more than 100 defensive value in the city itself, and we only have 2 units sitting there. So it's going to take quite a bit for them to be able to overcome that, especially as they have to really chip away at our flanks to start surrounding the city for a good chance of beating us back. So now we just have to strengthen the flanks of both sides of Smolensk, which is what we'll be focusing on. For this episode of Turn 5, though, we're focused on everything south of Aryol. So we're going to be looking here at this swampland that's north of Kiev, what we're going to do in the Kiev region, and how we start trying to address these gaps in our line because we haven't been focusing any of our reinforcements towards this part of the theater. Right? We are in the south, we are much more vulnerable right now because we've made the conscious decision to say Moscow first, Leningrad second, everything else is third and fourth. And that everything else is Rostov, Sevastopol, etc. And we'll see if that pays out for us. Maybe it's a horrible decision. We must simply keep playing to find out. So let's keep looking here. We've got like these HQ units I'm going to bring back a little bit because I did have some of these units assigned to some of these. This particular unit, I actually think I am going to pull it back just because I don't know that it's worth it being surrounded in the next turn, and they certainly are going to have enough to be able to beat us back here. So we're going to bring this unit back here. And then this unit, we're going to do the same and bring it back here. Right, we've kind of done our task. We've slowed them in this area of the front. Now it's time to make sure we don't just throw away our units. Here, we're going to move back just one. This HQ unit, we're just going to bring back a little bit. Same with this HQ unit. This airborne unit I've already moved, it looks like, probably from the north a little. This unit had routed, so I'm actually going to bring them back to this swamp hex and set them on refit to try to recover themselves and start digging in there. Here we have two rifle divisions, and they're both pretty weak. I mean, they're both at about 50% TOE just from looking at the number of men, but I don't want them to get surrounded like we had happen here. It's good to slow down the enemy, but having our units encircled is one of the worst possible things we can do right now. So what I'm going to do is take these two units and actually move them back here to the other side of this river and force them to go through this crap terrain instead of them encircling us, and this guy's just going to have to stay here and try to slow them down a little. And we don't have too much then behind here to build out this defensive front, so that's the other reason I don't want these guys encircled. Is at the moment this is really all I've got between this portion of the front and their push towards Kharkov. We'll get some help from some of these units that are moving south. Like I'm thinking these 4 infantry divisions likely can go just kind of north-south right here to help with that defensive line. But it's not like we have entire armies coming south to help here. Now when we get to just north of Kiev, this is going to start to get pretty interesting. Because honestly, what I'm going to start doing this turn is I'm actually going to start pulling back units from Kiev. I'm going to start, I'm not going to say surrendering the city, but I'm not going to have as much of a defensive presence as we currently have built up there. So we're going to have much more of an attitude of retreat in this turn in this area. We're not going to pull back everything, right? So for example here, this is a pretty strategic hex with all of these rail and roads interconnecting here with the swampland, so I'm probably going to leave these guys and the surrounding units on their flanks because it's a very defensible position. But these guys, I keep saying these guys, it's just like I'm from New Jersey or something here. Some of these I'm going to start actually moving back because I don't want them to get cut off. And they've kind of done their task of making it where the enemy cannot simply break through and have a good field day. Here we're going to bring back this guy. We're going to just start adding some depth here to our lines. You don't need to be all the way up there. So let's actually bring you south here. This infantry division is a similar story, so I'm going to pull them back to, let's see. Let's actually bring them all the way back here. It is going to fatigue them, but that's going to be okay. The important thing is that we don't just lose 5,000 men. Right, that's the important part. Take the HQ units back. Right, no need to risk them. Here we have this very depleted tank division, which again we just need to try to save the 1,300 men and 80 vehicles that they have. This security unit, we're just going to move back a little bit here. Right, so they'll kind of be that force that says, hey, I'm at the very least going to project a zone of control and make you work for it a little bit. That's what we're going to do here. I'm actually going to bring them up there. So again, they're projecting that zone of control as they try to advance south to Kiev. Here, this mechanized division is just 290 men. Are going to have them retreat back as well. This HQ unit can come back. As can this HQ unit. These machine gun emplacements we just are going to leave right where they're at, again, as a bit of a stopping force. Really not too many men that could be saved there, even if we did pull them back. This security unit isn't going to be able to actually retreat out of this pocket. So given that, debating whether or not I leave them right in the hex they're in. I am going to pull them back, just because this is also heavy woods, and I'm hopeful that it still maintains a high defensive value. And now it kind of presses them to... They have to move these units now north, which will expend fatigue and combat preparation before they then conduct an attack. It's probably not going to save the unit, but I'm hoping it makes it just a little bit more difficult for them to successfully execute against it. So now that we've moved some of those units back, I'm now going to start to take a look and say, okay, which of these units am I just going to retreat, right? So I'll give you a great example here. Like this mechanized division, I'm going to bring them all the way back here to help with the defense here in this hex. And same thing with this mechanized division. Our mechanized divisions, I'm going to start pulling back as they have the mobility to be much more impactful if we get them in the proper areas. Let's actually pull them back to the city, I think. But these are pretty valuable units that I don't want to have become surrounded, encircled, etc. in Kiev. I'd rather use them to start forming this defensive perimeter to stop this advance. The Axis player will eventually surround Kiev. Can I slow them down? Absolutely. Do I need to lose a whole bunch of divisions to slow them down? No, I really don't. So we're going to look at where we can kind of move guys around to stop them. This guy is just north of Kiev, so I think I might actually leave him there. And then here, let's move you. I'm trying to think if I move you. Let's do this. I don't necessarily want... All of these tank divisions I'm going to retreat. I'm just going to get them all out of there. The question is, do I bring some north to help with the defense of Kharkov, or do I just immediately bring them south here? And my gut says to immediately bring them south here. So let's take you to that hex. You guys can go here. Alright. So Kiev itself is actually empty now that we've done that. So let's take a look at what we can bring in to defend Kiev. We have so much armor here, it's ridiculous. I'm going to take this rifle division. We're going to put them in Kiev. This mechanized division I want to pull back. So let's have you come up here. This tank division I want to pull back. All along the line here we're going to do similar things. The airborne brigade can stay, but the tank division is going to retreat. This tank division's on refit. I'm actually going to bring you all the way back there to that city. You can stay on refit there. They can take this guy off the train. There we go. So we have airborne brigade, airborne brigade. Here we have a tank division that we're going to get out of there. Really does feel a little bit like I'm giving up on Kiev, but I just have to make some tough decisions here, is kind of how I feel about it. I have to make some tough decisions. And I would rather defend this line of swamp instead of getting all these guys encircled. Trying to bring them back here. Let's bring these guys here. A lot of these I'm going to bring back over here. You come north there. This HQ unit can go here. This HQ HQ unit I'm also going to pull back. These 2 infantry units, I might leave like one of them as a stopping force. Yeah, let's pull you back there then. This tank division was routed and is on refit. Let's just keep you moving towards the rear. This tank division we're just going to pull out entirely. And they're on ready anyways. Let's have them go on those HQs and go to refit. Okay. Now part of this too is I'm hoping that I get these guys to say, oh, our northern front is now open, let's encircle Kiev, instead of let's continue straight towards these undefended objectives. I'm kind of sacrificing Kiev to give us enough time to form a defensive line elsewhere, since we weren't able to stop this breakout here. So, like, this is the other point of note is, had I done a better job managing the front, and had I, like, this entire pocket that I'm kind of hovering my mouse over, had I defended this in a north-south line here successfully, I might not be making this decision right now about these withdrawals. But because they've expanded my front so much, I don't have any confidence in being able to stop them from getting behind us. And I simply cannot lose all of these units in Kiev. It's just not an option for me. I have to pull some back. I don't want to, I just have to. You're all the airborne brigades there, so yeah, you can stay, that's fine. You are way over here, so we're going to bring you back. It's actually a pretty good spot for you right there. Okay. And actually, now that I look at this, I'm going to look at some of these units to start pulling them back here to building out this new defensive line. So like the mechanized unit, I think I'll pull south. Let's have you go here. I really don't need both rifle divisions there, right? So let's take you here. Right, so now we're building these layers of defense. You've both moved. This mechanized unit I might pull back. Let's do that. Let's pull you back to here. Right, so now in this one turn, we've pretty much established a new line that is contiguous from, what is this city? Kremenchug, all the way north to Aryol. Right, there's a gap here and here, but I mean, effectively, you can kind of visualize this line, and at the same time, the Axis player is going to have to divert resources to taking Kiev. Now, what I might also do, actually, is look here and go, okay, let's like move you here to bring you up to a 2, as an example, and then we have more zones of controls that they can't quite so easily break through. Right, is kind of my thought there. That infantry division I think I'll leave. This anti-tank unit I think I'll bring into Kiev. And then this NKVD motorized rifle division, I might bring them into Kiev as well. Right, so that should at the very least force them to assault the city. And then here, right, if I bring you north, yeah, so you can sit right there. Okay. And then these guys will again start to slowly pull back as opportunities present themselves. But like, I'm not just going to give up this hex here because I'm not in a situation where this hex can easily be isolated and surrounded. His right flank, his eastern flank is protected. His western flank is protected. Right, I stand a pretty good chance of being able to hold this line for another turn. Then I can pull back, and I'll have somewhere to pull back to. Right, and if they do get If they're defeated in battle this turn from a direct assault, they'll retreat or maybe rout, but they'll clearly be able to then draw back to a defensive position in which they're going to be able to recover themselves in. So I'm trying I am trying to convey as much optimism as I can about a full-on retreat and an abandonment of the capital of modern-day Ukraine. It's difficult to put too big of a positive spin on it, but boy, if you can't tell, I'm trying. Here we have a cavalry division. Here we have a full rifle division. I really don't see any reason to sacrifice a full rifle division to the 14th Panzer and the 16th Motorized Divisions, right? So, let's pull them back. Here, we'll pull back this cavalry unit. This mechanized division. Yeah, let's just get you all the way back here. Turn you back to refit. This mechanized division. Need to start building out a front line. Bring this HQ unit back here. And the really difficult part right here is just there is no defensible terrain for me to use. All of these units are going to have a defensive value of 1 unless they build up some fortifications, which is just awful. But I also can't just lose 11,000 men rifle divisions. Just because I want to stay here and get an extra 5 defensive combat value. And again, we talked about this in some of the earlier episodes, kind of a rule of thumb that Misha pointed out so well, I think, is that when you're thinking about how fast to retreat as the Soviet player, you want to be able to slow down the motorized and the panzer divisions that the Axis player has, but what you don't want to do is find yourself where your infantry is fighting battles against their infantry. Because in that case, the German player in the summer of 1941 will always steamroll you, and you haven't done anything to slow down the dangerous advance of the panzers and the motorized divisions. They've already passed you. So at that point, get the heck out of Dodge. And when you look here, we are fighting against rifle divisions. So it's time to run, frankly. So we're going to come back here. A lot of HQ units we just need to pull back. A lot of HQ units. Take you back there. There. Oh, a lot of HQ units. Let's put you there. I feel like I could use some of these armies further north. There we go. This armor division can come back here, maybe. Does it make sense to defend this hex, I'm wondering? Maybe. We'll see. What if we bring that mechanized unit there? Nah, it's not really worth it. So let's instead just have you come down here. The security border guard unit, right? I'm just going to pull them back a little bit. Maybe to here. Kind of that crossroads of that rail line. Here we have 169 units in this airborne unit, so you know what, I'm just actually going to stick them right there to try to slow them down a little. This armor unit we will bring here. We'll set them on reserve. Back here we have this mountain division. There are some motorized units there, but I still think I'm going to pull back. Does it look like there? No. Let's get a better defensive position here. That might work. No, we're just going to pull back entirely. Okay. This airborne brigade can go there. This rifle division there. time to retreat these guys. Right? There's no there's no reason to let them have the same fate that these 3 divisions do. And because I didn't keep a close enough eye on this, this is going to be almost 30,000 men that we're just going to lose next turn because I did not pull them back in time. Right? They really probably did not have any effect on slowing down this push here. But now we're going to lose 30,000 men as a result. And that is a tough situation. Let's pull this HQ unit back here. This border guard unit that has all of 28 men. Because it's in a routed status and depleted, I don't even know that would slow them down. But we'll just set them there, I guess. Here it looks like we're actually going to be able to rescue our units on the other side of the river here. So let's first move the furthest away units, right? So we'll move this rifle division here. This tank division needs to go to a refit status, so we're going to bring them back here to their HQ. This HQ, the Coastal Army, actually does not look like it's going to be able to make it out. If we move you there, that's 10. It might be worth trying to hold that for a turn. Let's pull you there. Here it's just 3,000 men, so we'll try to hold that hex. Both of these tank divisions are on refit. Is that really necessary? You have no heavy tanks, but you have a full complement of medium tanks. Cavalry tanks are just 12%. So yeah, it probably is necessary. So let's pull both of you south. I'm gonna set you both to reserve instead of refit, because although you're hurting a little bit, you're still at a point where you could contribute here pretty well to the situation at hand. And the Southern Air Command can just come back here. That's just not necessary where they're at. Okay. So now this is going to be the line of defense, right, is what we're starting to build out here. Because this is just amazing territory to defend. And I'm going to try so hard to hold this as long as I can. Because we get some really good defensive combat values when holding this stuff. I'm also going to take like this rifle division and bring them down to start helping with the defense here. I don't know if I want to bring them all the way down, or if it's better to have them further north. I think I'm going to bring them further down than not. Actually, might bring them here to this part in the line because we're pretty weak right there. This cavalry division's depleted, so let's just pull you back to your HQ. Set you on refit. You can go to ready. You were on refit, but I think you're good now. You are. Okay. And I'm actually going to take this unit here. A little suboptimal how I had done that. It would have been better to stop this cavalry division right here. But I think it'll be okay. Alright, and then, yeah, hopefully it's a while until we have to worry about the defense of Sevastopol, but it's coming. It is coming. So that pretty much wraps up our ground combat movements. I mean, I have this guy back here, all these 7,000 men. I don't know that there's good terrain they can get to. All the rough terrain seems to be out of range. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm assuming they have not repaired the rail line, but maybe I'm wrong. So let's just move them here to try to disrupt that a little. And maybe if they just don't bother with us, we can get to these hills next turn and put up a little bit more of a fight than we otherwise would have. I don't know. Like this mountain division this mountain division. I feel like it's probably best to keep them in their fortified locations that they're in. So let's even move you here, just to try to defend yourselves together. So now at the very least it's a defensive value of 3. Maybe they can hold against an attack or two and kill a few more enemy troops than they otherwise would separately. I don't know. But thankfully we did not have our 4 or 5 infantry divisions surrounded and trapped here, so that's good news. I'm happy about that. We see this airborne brigade. Actually just going to have them join the city fortification. There we go. Yeah. A lot of units there in Odessa. And they've got a fair number starting to build up. But right now they don't even have 1-to-1. And we're going to keep getting supplies because of the import port that Odessa is. So hopefully we can tie down all of these units for a few more turns. Historically, I think it lasted until the fall of 41, somewhere around there. We'll see if that does continue, and we can get somewhat close to that. I don't know if we will. Let's see. I don't think we have anything in the Caucasus region or back here to move up. I think we've already gotten all of those quick wins. Oh, no, I take that back. There is a mountain cavalry division. So where should we bring you? We bring you to Stalino, you don't have enough to unload. So maybe it's just best to bring you to wherever we are weakest on the front line. And at the moment, I would say that's probably down south here. So let's do that, and then next turn you'll be ready to unload from the train. Yeah, I need 46, and we're not there, so that's fine. And I don't see any others. This is all the militia still from Moscow. That's fine as is. Should just use the commander's report instead of scrolling manually like this, but it's okay, I guess. Okay. So I think that wraps up all of our ground movements for this turn. Now the next question is, so we're going to have a number of units in our reserve that we're going to want to call up, much like we have for the last 4 turns. The question is, where do we want them to go? Right, so we talked at the beginning of the episode of how we're really starting to look very dense and layered in our defense of Aryol, Smolensk, and Leningrad, etc. We would always find ourselves in a situation of we would like to be a little bit more defensive and have more defensive numbers than we currently have there, but we can't, for all of time, send units just to the north. We also sometimes have to look at the south, and it is a little worrying at this massive units in Army Group South that the Axis player has, that has this breakout here, and how quickly they are moving east towards these strategic objectives. So given that, I think it's probably prudent that we take a shift from our previous 4 turns and we send some of our reserve units here to the south. And I think we're going to send them to Zaporizhzhia. And we're going to go to our reserve box. No, sorry. We're going to go back to Zaporizhzhia. We're going to go here and say set reserve theater box arrival hex. Now we'll confirm that that is, and you can see it's listed there. And now let's start taking a look at what we want to deploy there. So right off the bat, I see this mechanized division. I am going to transfer them. We have significantly fewer rifle divisions than we have in the past turns, but it's still 8 rifle divisions at a 80% or higher TOE, so we're going to take all of them. And I mean, that's nearly 100,000 men that we're going to be throwing to the southern half of our theater, and hopefully that's pretty impactful. 100,000 men manning the defenses along the Dnieper hopefully does make a meaningful impact in slowing down the Axis advance. So we keep going through these. The tank divisions, the separate tank regiments and battalions, I'm going to leave on reserve, I think. And we have that one tank division there. I don't know what his TOE is. It's actually 77, which isn't so bad, so I'm going to deploy you to the map, I think. I could use that. But the support units, the regiments and battalions, I'm going to leave there. And then we have a whole bunch of cavalry divisions. And these cavalry divisions are a little lower. They're at about 70% TOE. But honestly, with each one representing 4,000 men, I mean, if you think about it, in later stages of the war, that's like effectively a very strong rifle brigade, except these guys are mounted and can move more quickly. So I think I am going to deploy all of these cavalry divisions. And I'm hopeful that by doing so, we're just going to throw enough raw men and materials at the problem in the south that we can then spend a couple more turns focusing on Smolensk, Leningrad, in terms of reinforcements coming in, and then ignore the south for another couple of turns. I'm hoping that by really going all in here with the cavalry divisions and the rifle divisions that were available to us and sending them to the south, that will be able to hold us over for a while. I hope. I don't know if it will be true, but I hope. So each of these has a combat value of about 1. You look a little different, though. You're at 0.5. Why are you at 0.5? Oh, you're not ready to be transferred, that's why. You're still building up. Keep going through these. But you put one of these in a Swamp Hex, and hopefully that gives a combat value of 4 or 5, something like that. And then if we have a consistent line of that across the front, armor units behind the front line acting as reserve units, etc., I'm hopeful that it means we can at least slow the Axis player down for 2 to 4 turns along the Dnieper River. That's kind of what I'm hoping for, because if I can get 4 turns, that gets us almost to the end of August. And if we get to the end of August and they're just crossing the Dnieper there in the south by the Crimea, I think that puts us in a pretty good position, at least much better than I was expecting. It is not better than the historical timeline, right? We are currently losing when compared to the historical timeline, but I'm hopeful. Don't know that I call it blind optimism, but it's certainly a lot of optimism on my part. I'm hopeful that because of how aggressively we've gone towards defending the north half of the front, that will mean we are more able to stop them further from Moscow and Leningrad than historically. Although I think Leningrad might be a little tough, but the Moscow front, I'm hoping that it gives us enough of an opportunity to really stop them at the gates. And again, if I can hold Moscow and Leningrad through 1941, unless they take these southern objectives at a ridiculously aggressive schedule, I think that should pretty much guarantee us surviving 1941 if we can hold Moscow and Leningrad. And if we do hold Moscow and Leningrad, it will be because they did not get Rzhev and Kalin and Tula ahead of, or measurably ahead of, historical dates, so they don't get any bonus victory points from that. I don't know. As this series goes on, I grow a little bit more confident in my decisions, but that may just be because, as I mentioned, now we can zoom out and we can actually see a front line developing, which is just, oh my gosh, guys, I sleep so much easier knowing there's a front line in this save game right now. It really means a lot to me mentally that we have something established in terms of a defensive front. But I do feel like we're getting more and more of a handle on the situation. The question, as we've been saying, is going to be, as we get towards the second half of 1941, as we approach the fall months, did we get a handle on things quickly enough to prevent an Axis victory in 1941? That's the part I don't know about. What I do know about is it's starting to feel like the decisions we've made have been pretty impactful, and they seem to be working to an extent. All of that aside, let's turn on the AI Depot management, and then we're going to hit intern. And let's see what the German player has in store for us. It's going to be interesting. I just got done speaking about how optimistic I was feeling considering the front line, and now as I sit here without any ability to interact with anything, um, I have to watch the Axis player just cut through our front lines like a knife through warm butter. Um, and we'll see just how well defended we've got everything right now. Maybe it'll turn out great, but just so many times we've done this and it's been, oh, look at that. They've completely crushed the entire frontal perimeter of Smolensk. What do you know? There goes that whole front line. We'll see if that happens again. A note is, remember that the current weather conditions are rain and mud, so hopefully that does go in our favor, right? Because it is really crappy attacking a defensive fortified position when it's raining on you all week and the ground is muddy, right? No soldier in human history has enjoyed that situation. To be fair, most soldiers in human history have not enjoyed any aspects of war, or many aspects of war, perhaps would be a better way of saying it. So yeah, there's that. but hopefully the mud gives us some type of advantage here in our defense. It's still going through their logistics phase before we get to see all the big explosions and what they do. And in the air phase, I'm assuming that they're going to continue just moving their air armies further east as they had done in the previous turn, especially given that from the weather conditions perspective, it's probably not best for them to be leveraging a lot of ground support or ground attacks. And hopefully that does hold true, because I could do with the turn without the German Luftwaffe getting too involved. Alright. Still goes to 79 and then jumps down to 75. Get a kick out of it every time I see that in the logistics percent. Alright, here is their air phase. And seems like they're running recon on day one, which is pretty consistent with what they've been doing. Getting into day 3, it's their second day of recon. Yeah, so there's not any sorties going right now in terms of ground attack or level bombing or anything like that. So just 3 different days of recon done by the Axis player for the air phase, that's all. It's not bad. Now we get to their ground combat phase. So here they're pushing north of Peskov. As predicted, the first weak point is on the western front of the Peskov pocket. This is by Kiev, right? So we had a couple of these machine gun units that were left behind, and they're just making short work of them again, just a couple hundred men in each of them. But theoretically it slowed them down a little bit. Here they're actually attacking just outside of Kiev, so that security division had to retreat. That's the one that we couldn't quite pull back far enough. So at the very least it was not isolated and surrendered. At the very least it lives to fight another day, although what its combat effectiveness is yet to be seen. Here this is north of Kiev. One of our infantry divisions had gotten caught behind enemy lines. They've now successfully defended one attack, but the second they ended up surrendering. So that's just, it feels like such a waste to me. It's a loss of 7,000 men just because we didn't pull them back at a timely enough pace. They're now assaulting the outer perimeter of Kiev. So all of the machine gun battalions south of the city, they've now pushed back. Which means in the next couple of turns they'll probably start assaults on Kiev. This is in between Smolensk and Bryansk. Now we're back to Kiev. Sorry for jumping all over the place, guys. And they're pushing back the airborne brigades that we had left on the southern flank. And we didn't expect those really to last more than a turn. And yeah, so we've had a rout and a surrender, or a rout and a retreat, I should say. So they're going to be surrounding Kiev in the next probably 1 to 2 turns, which is again one of the reasons we pulled back those units. Is even if I would have left some of those infantry divisions where those airborne brigades are, it would not have stopped the outcome that we just saw. So I feel pretty justified in the decision we did make there. That rifle division actually got shattered, so that might have been a unit that had routed, was depleted in previous turns. Another airborne brigade retreats south of Kiev. Here we surrendered and retreated. This is where we moved the infantry division on the mountain division. Back to Kiev, airborne brigade shatters. So they've now cut in kind of behind our line of Kiev, which means that had we left all of our troops there, they probably would not have been able to escape the pocket that was being built around Kiev, right? So it's exactly why we made that decision. They're now pushing towards Aryol, and it looks like we held out the first attack, but the second, this rifle division was just overwhelmed. They're now being attacked again, and this is the Großdeutschland Motorized Regiment. Not many men, but pretty specialized and skilled troops. We actually held off this attack that they had. Their leader said, this isn't going to go well, we're going to stop early. The Das Reich SS Motorized Division attacked once more. So we managed to have some successful holds there. Oh, big battle, big battle. This is just next to Lake Ilmen. We managed to hold off against the 58th Infantry Division. It looks like they're attacking again, and I think we held once more. We did. Holding that hex is pretty important to us. And it looks like we held against a third attack. They're not taking many losses, though, because their leader is recognizing that we're not going to win. And then finally we did retreat, and the units retreated north towards Novgorod. South of that hex, south of Lake Ilmen, they're now pushing through here. We were pushed back and we retreated. So I do worry about the conditions of troops south of Lake Ilmen. It's getting a little tenuous. And north of Lake Ilmen, we're being pushed back a little. But at the very least, we're having a lot of instances where we're holding our ground. But they're, oh my gosh, they're throwing so much at us. Look at this full stack with a Panzer Division and everything. It's getting tough. The encouraging news, though, is that with each attack that they're making, it lowers their combat preparation, it increases their fatigue. So, I mean, by holding them each attack, it really is weakening their ability to attack us in future turns and in future battles. So I'm really encouraged by that, at least. Here they came and just really pounded this airborne brigade, and they were forced to retreat. This is north of Smolensk on the flank. They're trying to push through, again, to try to get around and behind the city. First attack we held, the second we held. I don't know that we're going to be able to hold a third, given what they have here sitting in this stack. Yeah, and in the third attack, they brought it all, and they really were able to push through. So it's a little unfortunate. Here, they're continuing to push. We have a pretty defensive position here, though, so it's going to take this full stack of units to be able to push us out of there. So at least there's that. And again, I'm hopeful that that means all of these units, like the Totenkopf Motorized Division, they then find themselves with significantly weakened combat preparation for future turns. It's just now the fourth attack against this hex, and we continue to hold. Oh, okay. That time we retreated. I thought we were going to hold. So some of these are coming at great cost to them, but really, from their perspective, they have to get around Smolensk. They absolutely have to, because a frontal assault on it's just not going to be successful. And we really have to leverage our terrain here to try to defend against them. Look at that. We destroyed 20 armor and another 14 armor. So in the span of 2 turns, that rifle division took out 34 armor that the enemy had. That's great news. That's 34 less armor to continue countering us and going around us. Good, good. So next turn, all of these heavy woods here, we're just going to keep populating them, and we're going to keep building this wall that they have to slog through to try to surround Smolensk. And that's going to be the entire objective. They did end up routing, though. They have a lot of panzer divisions in this Army Group Central pushing towards Moscow. Here is the 7th Panzer, again attacking. They lost 4 armor, they lost another 2 this time. Each and every turn where we take out a couple of their armor is so meaningful. They lost another one, but we did end up having to retreat out of that hex. They're continuing to push north now that they've broken through. This is where it gets a little dangerous for us. So they made good progress north of Smolensk, but it wasn't as bad as I envisioned it could have been. It's kind of a, yeah, that meets expectations in terms of our losses and where they got to. So we'll see how we're going to be able to recover and reestablish a front line against what they've done. That's going to be the next big question, because what's going to be really difficult as we review the situation in the next episode is, how do we reform the defensive line without giving up so much land that they don't have to fight through heavy woods, but at the same time not find our forces surrounded because we tried to cling to heavy woods or rough hills or swampland, right? Here they're trying to push through a little bit. This is, again, west of Smolensk. Looks like we held the first attack, though. Now we're getting into later stages of their ground operations, so we'll see how that continues to develop throughout the turn. Still sitting at 12%, so they got a ways to go, probably. I don't think we've seen anything in the south, really, other than the operations by Kiev. Like, we haven't seen anything by Odessa, Crimea, etc. Must not be a priority attack 1. And I need to shut up, because next thing I know, it's just going to be a complete rush in the south, because I made these jokes about them not attacking there yet. Yeah, so this entire pocket here, we're going to have a decision to make. Do we hold this very defensible ground, or do we pull back? It's going to be a tough call. This is actually north of Kiev here. Looks like we managed to hold the first attack, but then the airborne brigade had to retreat. So again, it was just a bit of a stopping force, and it did its job. That's what it was meant to do, is it took 2 units, slowed them down, forced them to enter into a zone of control, and to expend combat preparation. This is south of Smolensk, in between Smolensk and Bryansk. And we've held now 2 attacks, which is good news, but we don't really have enough strength there to hold against a third, I don't think. Oh, we did? We did? Okay. A 4th, though, surely is too much. Maybe not. Oh, wow. We may have held that. That's really good news if we did. Regardless, we might have to end up retreating here to these hexes because they broke so far north. But we'll see what happens. The difficult part's going to be, because they have zone of control in both these hexes, I don't know if we're going to be able to actually pull out of these hexes before being surrounded. That's what gets really difficult about this situation. Another airborne brigade retreated, but again, they were just a slowing motion until they get here to these woods where we're really trying to put up a defensive front. Holy crap. Okay, so they already attacked Kiev. I did not expect that. I expected them to try to surround the city, kind of like they did with Odessa, and wait a turn or 2. But the really bad news there is that means that Kiev has now significantly reduced their defensive combat value. And the city might fall in the next turn, which I was not expecting. Okay, so that was not in the cards, not in the plan. And that's just disappointing. I'll be curious to see the combat results from that. To see if maybe we at least made them pay for it. That little aggressive decision that they had. I don't know why they would have attacked so aggressively in this turn. Yeah, so you see here we had this unit get surrounded, and I'm sure more would have happened if we hadn't pulled back more quickly. It's a little off screen here, but right where we had pulled back all of these units is where they're starting to attack. Like they have this panzer division here, but we're managing to hold for now. Okay, yeah, so this is that wooded hex that we pulled so many units back to. And one of the difficulties is just look at all these motorized divisions that they have in this clear terrain, and it's just not even a fair fight sometimes because there's no defensible ground for us to hold. Oh, this is getting a little painful to watch now. So we're really going to have to pull back again and try to build a defensive line here. It's just going to start to get tough, though, once we actually hit these two cities, because I can defend this city because of the southern swamp and terrain that's here, but north of it, there's just not much for me to use. Okay, here they're trying to break through this unit that we weren't able to evacuate across this waterway. I just hope if they retreat this way. I don't know if they will, though. I worry they're going to retreat in this direction and then they'll become surrounded. They held again? Okay. Maybe they did hold out then. Speaking too soon once more. Feels like these Axis turns last forever because they have so many things to attack. We still haven't attacked anything. I can't wait for the day we counterattack something. It'll be so much fun. We'll pop a bottle of champagne to celebrate the occasion. Still at 12%. If you can't tell from my anxious voice, I would really like them to just be done attacking me. That would be really pleasant if they could just stop now. But I don't think they're going to, and I can't say I blame them. Let's see here. I think they're just moving units around on the front right now. Oh, wow. Okay, they pushed much further than I thought they would. That's a worry for me. That right there is a concern for me. I need more time to build out this defensive front. I worry about them being that far forward. That is problematic for me. Oh, look at what they've brought in too to surround Odessa. My goodness, more and more units coming in there. Okay, but now their turn's just about done. I have some concerns south by the Crimea now that they've advanced so far. They've pushed much further east than I would have liked to see here along the Dnieper River. And I'm looking at the map going, I'm not sure where the next defensible terrain is to hide in. It's just so difficult right now looking at the map to find that location that we're going to be able to make our stand on. And really, I think it all comes down here to the Dnieper River. So I'm really glad I brought in the units here in terms of reinforcements, because I immediately need to start getting them here along the river to try to build a defensive line immediately. That will be the priority for turn 6, I think. And also trying to counter their flanking maneuvers around Smolensk now that those are in full effect. Lot to do, guys. The good news is we are not going to run out of content in the near future here for the series. There is plenty to do. It's going to be a good time. I might be sweating, but it's going to be a good time. All right, turn summary. We lost 130,000 men, 2,000 guns, 355 armor. The armor number is much lower than it had been. 880 airframes. We ended up being positive 100,000 men on the front line on the maps, whereas the Axis player was negative 23,000. So I think that's 2 turns in a row now we've seen that trend. And this is just kind of that whole 1941. It's not a matter of the Soviets having better tactics per se, more so just, well, you can maybe argue this is a tactic, more so just engaging the Axis player in a war of attrition is really what we're doing. 146 units low supply, 52 under strength. The under strength number I think has actually gone down, but we have 76 that are unready, 15 that are isolated, so they continue to surround some of our units, which is unfortunate. And then some depleted units as well. For new events, So the German Air Force has had a setback in North Africa, and Soviet partisans begin their work in Belarusia. So quite a bit going on here. Guys, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Want to say thank you as always for your continued support of the video, the series, and the game, this wonderful game these developers have made. Should you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please drop them in the comments section below, and I'll be sure to get back to you as soon as I can. And with that, strategy gamers, hoping you have yourselves an excellent day. Bye now.